You are not
Black
authorized to be here.
CEO
Get off
told
this yacht
you
immediately.
don't belong
I'm not going
on
anywhere.
this yacht. Minutes later,
You can't seriously
she
expect us to
proved
sail on
them
these
wrong.
conditions. This is highly irregular and
The
frankly
slap
dangerous.
didn't come
The
from a
voyage will proceed
hand.
as planned.
You are not
It
authorized to be here.
came
Get off my
from
dock
a
before I call
voice.
security. Sir, please,
You
Captain. Let's
don't
just calm down. We can
belong
work this
on
out.
this
I'm not looking for
yacht.
trouble. You are
The
not going
sentence
anywhere.
cracked
We need to
across the
discuss this
morning
immediately.
air
Let
like
go
a
of my
rope
arm.
snapping under tension. Sharp. Public. Deliberate. Deck lights shimmered over the water. Guests milled quietly along the pier. Gulls circled above like silent witnesses, yet everything froze on that one line. Even the ocean seemed to inhale. Amara Lewis stood at the foot of the boarding ramp, one hand resting lightly on the rail, the other holding a simple linen tote. Nothing about her looked wealthy. Not the sand-colored dress, not the low bun, not the absence of jewelry. She looked like a woman stepping onto a ferry, not a floating palace worth more than most penthouses on the coast. But the man blocking her way didn't see a ferry passenger. He saw a target. He stepped forward, jaw-tight polo uniform, crisp sunglasses, pushed high like armor. The badge on his chest read Operations Manager. His voice carried the smug confidence of someone who believed the rules were written for him and him alone. I said, "Step back. Owners and VIPs only." He didn't whisper. He projected loud enough for the guests nearby to hear, loud enough to spark whispers, loud enough to set the tone. A ripple of heads turned. One woman stifled a laugh. Another man murmured, "Here, we go," under his breath. Amara didn't argue. Didn't flinch. Didn't even look surprised. She had seen this performance before at 22 when a broker told her she looked lost in the investment lobby, at 30 when a security guard mistook her for someone cutting through, last year when a corporate partner asked if she was sure she was in the right meeting. This wasn't new. It was a rerun. The manager took her silence as submission. "A fatal misread. Ma'am, you're holding up boarding. If you don't step off the ramp, I'll have security escort you back to the public dock." His tone sharpened. "Don't make this harder." The sun caught the side of his sunglasses, throwing a small glint across her face like the flash of a blade. A few steps behind him, two deckhands exchanged glances, one amused, one uncomfortable. A young crew member near the ropes froze mid-coil, eyes lifting toward her recognition, flickering, but fear held his tongue. Amara inhaled once slow and steady, letting the salt air settle in her chest. Her voice, when it came, was soft. Too soft for someone being pushed aside. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." The manager scoffed. "Not today, you're not." He raised a hand, not touching, not yet, but close enough to shadow her shoulder. A gesture meant to guide. A gesture meant to control. A gesture meant to remind her of where he believed she stood. The pier held its breath. Phones tilted. Brows rose. The line of boarding guests paused like a tableau frozen in amber. And then, before we continue, the voiceover cuts in low, intimate, pulling the audience closer. "Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe." These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to Amara. Her fingers tightened around the rail, not in fear, but in patience sharpened to steel. The manager leaned closer enough that his shadow swallowed her feet. "Ma'am, I won't say it again. Step away from the yacht." A gust of wind swept across the deck, lifting her dress slightly, carrying the faint scent of teakwood and engine oil. In that moment, she stood like an anchor sunk deep into the seabed, still unmoving, unshakable. She lifted her eyes to meet his. Calm. Composed. Quiet as a storm waiting for permission to break. "This yacht," she said, "voice even, is exactly where I belong." The words didn't rise. They didn't shake. But they carried weight heavy enough that even the young crew member by the ropes swallowed hard. Because something in her tone hinted at a truth no one on that deck was prepared for. Not the manager. Not the deckhands. Not the guests watching with smug amusement. And certainly not the man who had just told her she didn't belong on a vessel she had designed, funded, and built from keel to mast. The wind shifted, the tide tapped against the hull, and tension thickened until even the water felt charged. The insult had been delivered. The humiliation had been staged. The audience had gathered. But the manager had no idea he had just told the owner of the yacht she couldn't step aboard. And in a few minutes, the ocean would carry a very different story, one where silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy, and the storm was about to break. The pier kept buzzing behind her, but on the boarding ramp, time felt tight like a drum stretched to its limit. Amara didn't move. She didn't blink. She simply existed in a space where someone had tried to erase her. But erasing her had never worked. Not at 20. Not at 30. And certainly not now. The manager shifted his weight, annoyed that his performance wasn't landing the way he expected. Power usually made people flinch. He was used to that. He fed on it. But the woman standing in front of him remained impossibly still, like a pillar carved from calm. A yacht that size, 145 feet of steel teak and engineering perfection, should have made her look small. It didn't. It made her look centered. She stepped forward. One quiet step. Barely a sound on the ramp. The manager's hand shot up again. Ma'am. I said stop. Around them, the boarding guests hesitated, forming a half-moon of attention. A few champagne glasses paused midair. A couple whispered, not even trying to be discreet. Who is she? Why is she even trying? Probably someone's assistant. Amara caught every word. Ignored every word. The ocean beside the hull rose gently, brushing the yacht's skin like a warning. The water knew her. This boat knew her. Every welded joint, every polished railing, every sensor hidden behind the glassy panels, she had been part of its creation in ways no one here could imagine. But she didn't reveal that. Not yet. She let them underestimate her a little longer. The young crew member she'd noticed earlier stood a few feet away, still holding the coil of rope. He looked from the manager to Amara, anxiety creeping up his throat. For a moment he opened his mouth, then closed it again. Fear stitched his lips shut. He knew her face. Not from TV, not from magazines, but from a closed-door briefing 2 months earlier where the captain had announced new owner. Learn her profile. Treat her with respect. But he wasn't sure. She looked so human. So unlike what he imagined a billionaire yacht owner would look like. And that was exactly why Amara dressed the way she did today. The manager jabbed a finger at the ramp. If you walk onto this yacht uninvited, I'll have you removed from the marina. Don't test me. The arrogance was almost theatrical. Amara tilted her head, studying him the way a scientist studies a creature trying to look bigger than it really is. A soft voice from nearby broke through. Oh, hey, sir. You stay out of this. The boy swallowed hard. His hand tightened around the rope, but his eyes didn't leave Amara. Something in him said this wasn't right. Something in him said she didn't belong on the pier, she belonged on the yacht. Amara moved her gaze to the vessel's upper deck. Crew bustled around, tying lines, prepping equipment, setting trays. They all operated with the confidence of people who believed they were in control of their world. But the truth hovered like humidity in the air. They had no idea the world they were running belonged to the woman they were blocking. A breeze swept past, lifting the scent of salt sunscreen and diesel. The sun reflected off the water in bright fragments, little shards of light dancing around her feet as if urging her upward. But still, she didn't climb. She let silence stretch an invisible rope she controlled with one hand. The manager stepped closer. Do you understand what I'm saying, Mom? This is a private vessel. Private. You can't just walk up like you're somebody. Her eyes finally met his.
Calm, steady, unflinching.
Is that how you speak to all women? She said quietly. Or just the ones you assume don't matter? He bristled. Don't twist my... She raised a hand, silencing him without effort. Because it sounds, she continued gently, like you're not guarding the yacht. You're guarding your idea of who's worthy to be on it? A few guests murmured. Someone whispered damn under their breath. The manager's jaw locked. Look, lady, I'm just doing my job. Amara's voice softened, almost sympathetic. Are you something? Flickered across his face, confusion mixed with irritation. A crack in the armor. She stepped up onto the first metal plate of the boarding ramp. Not barging through, just reclaiming space. The manager moved fast, more out of panic than power. He placed his hand near her shoulder, too close, too familiar, too assumptive. But Amara didn't recoil. If anything, she looked bored. Ma'am, I'm warning you. One more step, her phone buzzed softly in her hand. Not loud enough for others to hear, but unmistakable. A message preview flickered, protocol ready. Standing by. Nia, she didn't reply. Not yet. She kept her voice low enough that only he could hear. You're very sure of yourself. He lifted his chin. I know how to spot trouble. No, she said, you know how to spot a stereotype? And you mistook it for authority. He blinked. She took another step. The ramp creaked quietly, like the yacht itself shifting in anticipation. But just before she reached the top, the young crew member finally spoke, voice trembling but pushed out with courage he didn't know he had. Sir, I think she's the manager whipped around again. I said quiet, but the boy raised his voice, this time louder, firmer. ITHINK, she's on the ownership list. Silence crashed over the pier. Every head turned. Every breath paused. Every judgment hiccuped. The manager stared at the kid, stunned. Amara stared at the kid, grateful but saying nothing. Because this wasn't the reveal. Not yet. This was only the tremor before the wave. The moment before the ocean decides to rise. And when it does, it will sweep the deck clean. The air changed first. Not the light, not the sound, the air. It thickened, tightened, stretched across the deck like invisible wire. Everyone felt it, even if they pretended they didn't. Something was shifting, and the yacht seemed to sense it before the humans did. The manager blinked at the young crew member, his jaw hanging open for half a second before irritation surged back into place like a mask snapping on. Ownership list, he barked. Do you hear yourself? She's not an owner. She's not even a guest, the boy swallowed. His rope slipped from his fingers, landing on the wooden planks with a soft thud. I saw the name. I remember it from the briefing. Oh, please. The manager scoffed, loud enough for the entire boarding line to hear. You skimmed a spreadsheet and suddenly think you're security? Don't embarrass yourself? He turned back to Amara, posture squared like a soldier defending borders he didn't own. Ma'am, last warning. Step off the ramp or I'll escalate this. There it was, the word that always appeared right before people overplayed their hand. Escalate. Amara exhaled slow and measured the kind of breath a surgeon takes before making a clean incision. She wasn't here to fight. She wasn't here to shout. She was here to observe, and they were giving her everything she needed. Behind her, a woman holding a glass of rose whispered to her partner, "This is turning into a whole scene." Another man in aviator sunglasses chuckled. Bet she sneaked in from the public dock. A small group of teens lifted their phones, pretending to scroll but recording all the same. The yacht's hull groaned softly as the tide shifted. It sounded almost impatient. The manager raised his voice, eager to dominate the moment. Security, he called toward the upper deck. I need an officer down here now. A uniformed guard on the second level turned, frowned, and started descending the narrow stairs. Heavy boots thudded with authority. The young crew member whispered under his breath, Oh, no, this isn't right. He took half a step toward Amara, but stopped, torn between truth and fear. The manager noticed the movement and snapped you. Step back. You're already on thin ice. The boy froze, shoulders knotted. Amara watched him quietly. He hadn't done much, but he'd done enough. Enough to be remembered. And enough to paint the manager into a corner he couldn't escape. A gust of wind swept through, whipping the edge of Amara's dress, scattering a few papers from a nearby clipboard. The sound of flapping sheets echoed like warning flags. The guard approached, tall, serious, unconvinced by anything except the badge on his chest. "What seems to be the issue?" he asked. The manager jabbed a finger toward Amara with an almost victorious grin. "She's attempting unauthorized boarding, refusing to leave. Claims she has some connection to the yacht." The guard's gaze turned heavy, measuring. "Ma'am," he said, "do you have identification, a ticket, anything that shows you're supposed to be here?" Amara didn't move. Didn't reach for her phone. Didn't offer a single document. Instead, she asked calmly, "Is that the protocol to demand proof?" Before asking what happened, the guard hesitated. The question wasn't aggressive, but it sliced right through the moment. "Well, we just need verification." "Verification," she repeated softly, letting the word linger like a ripple in still water. The manager jumped in, eager to regain control. "She has NONA. That's why she's stalling. And she's being difficult, so let's get her off the pier before guests complain." A soft laugh came from behind them, dry, disbelieving. One of the guests, a woman in a white sun hat, finally spoke up. "I mean, she hasn't raised her voice.
She hasn't touched anyone."
She just stood there. How is she difficult?" The manager ignored her. He wasn't interested in reality, only dominance. The guard stepped closer. "Ma'am, please step aside while we sort this out." The young crew member flinched. "No, no," the manager shot him a glare sharp enough to cut rope. "Another word and I'll make sure you're cleaning bilge water for the next month." His voice dropped, vicious and quiet. "You think defending strangers makes you noble, it makes you unemployed." Amara closed her eyes briefly, letting the ugliness settle.
She didn't rush to correct him.
She didn't need to, because every word he spoke was tying another knot in the rope, tightening around his own neck. The guard placed a hand near his radio. "Ma'am, I really need you to comply." Then, a shout from the pier. "What's going on down there?" A couple approached, dressed in resort casual, holding boarding passes. They looked irritated, not at Amara, but at the disruption. "We're supposed to be boarding. Why is everyone stopped?" the husband asked. "Because of her," the manager replied instantly. "She's trespassing." The wife frowned. "She doesn't look like she's trespassing. She looks like she's waiting." The manager's smile tightened. "Ma'am, with respect, you don't understand." "No," the woman cut in. "I understand perfectly. I understand what it looks like when someone's being singled out." The tension surged, like a wave drawing back before crashing. Amara looked at the guard. Her voice remained, "Even before you remove me, perhaps ask why you weren't given my name." The guard paused. "My name," she repeated softly, "should be on every access list you have. Yet somehow you claim you've never seen it." The manager scoffed. "You're delusional. No one with authority gets mistaken for a random walk-up." A cold smile curved across Amara's lips. "Not smug, just knowing." "Is that so?" Her phone vibrated again. Another message preview blinked. "Audit online. Stream ready." Nia, the guard, shifted uneasily. The guests leaned closer. The ocean slapped the hull like a ticking clock, and the rising tension finally crested into certainty. Something was about to break, and it wasn't her. The tension didn't snap all at once. It tightened slowly, painfully, like a rope dragged across metal. The guard stood frozen between duty and doubt. The manager stood inflated with confidence he hadn't earned. And Amara, she stood in absolute stillness, the kind that makes other people whisper without knowing why. Then it happened. A voice, small, shaky, but brave enough to tilt the entire scene, cut through the heavy silence. "Sir, she is on the ownership list." Every head snapped toward the sound. The young crew member, thin, nervous hands trembling from the pressure, had finally stepped out from the shadow of fear. His voice cracked, but he didn't look away from the manager this time. "I remember her name," he said again, louder now, stronger. "From the onboarding packet. From the safety briefing, she's on the list. A ripple tore through the boarding line. People leaned in. The guard's brows lifted. A guest's mouth fell open. The manager's face drained, then flushed, then hardened all in the span of a heartbeat. You, he hissed, jabbing a finger toward the boy mistaken. And you're speaking out of turn? But the kid didn't back down. He swallowed chest, visibly rising and falling. I'm not mistaken, he said. I know what I saw. The manager stepped forward, towering over him, trying to crush courage with presence alone. Do you want to lose your job today? He threatened, voice low enough for only the closest people to hear. The boy's throat bobbed. His hands trembled harder, but his eyes stayed locked on Amara. And that more than anything gave her the quiet confirmation she needed. This was the witness the moment demanded. One person with nothing to gain and everything to fear finally pushing back against a system built on assumptions. Amara gave him the slightest nod. Barely there. But enough. The guard looked between them, uncertainty spreading across his face like a slow stain. Sir, the guard said to the manager. If the crew member has recognition of her name, he's wrong, the manager snapped. He has to be wrong. Owners don't dress like that. The sentence hung in the air, ugly, exposed, undeniable. Someone in the boarding line gasped. A woman whispered, Did he really just say that? Another muttered, Not a good look. Still, the manager pressed on, doubling down as desperate men often do. Look at her, he said, gesturing sharply at Amara. She doesn't fit. Use common sense. It was the wrong thing to say. The worst thing to say. Because the young crew member finally broke. Common sense, he repeated, voice trembling with anger he had tried so hard to suppress. Common sense is checking the list before humiliating someone. The manager spun toward him again, but this time the boy didn't shrink. His voice rose, shaking at first and then sharpening like a blade pulled through fire. You didn't even look, he said. You assume. And that's not security. That's bias. A murmur of approval rolled through the guests. Even the guard took a half-step back, surprised by the sudden shift in the room's gravity. The manager's jaw clenched. I'm not having this conversation with you. You or the boy replied because you started it. For a moment, just a moment, the pier went completely still. Amara watched him speak, the young man standing there with a mixture of fear and defiance. She saw herself years ago in rooms where she was never meant to succeed. She saw her younger self swallowing humiliation and pretending it didn't hurt. This boy was doing something she once couldn't. And that stirred something deep inside her. The guard finally broke the silence. Sir, if there's even a chance she's on the list, we need to verify. The manager scoffed. There is no need. I run this deck. I know who belongs here. The boy stepped forward. No, he said. Quiet. Firm. Unshakable. You only know who you think belongs here. The words cut deeper than shouting ever could. The rope of tension snapped. Guests shifted. Cameras rose. A couple stepped closer, whispering he's right. He's telling the truth. Why won't the manager just check? The manager's face twisted in frustration as he realized control was slipping through his fingers. He turned toward the guard. Remove her. Now. The guard hesitated. Sir, with all due respect, that's an order. His voice cracked under the force of his own panic. And that's when Amara finally moved. Not fast, hast. Not aggressive. Just a single step forward, enough to reclaim the air he'd stolen. I listened to him, she said softly. The guard blinked. Mom, she looked at the young crew member, the only person who had dared stand between truth and convenience. He's the only one here who bothered to see me. A hush swept over the entire pier, the kind of hush that precedes a reveal, the kind of hush that makes everyone hold their breath. The young crew member lowered his eyes, overwhelmed, but she wasn't finished. What's your name? She asked. His lips parted. Ellie, he whispered. Eli Barnes. She nodded slowly. Thank you, Eli. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried further than any shout could. The manager's panic sharpened. Ma'am, that means nothing. It means everything, she replied. Then she reached for her phone. A soft vibration. A single tap. A whisper of a command. Proceed. Somewhere deep inside the yacht, an engine hummed differently, systems unlocking, protocols waking like a giant shifting in its sleep. At that exact moment, the witnesses had chosen their side, and the entire pier tilted toward her. The witness had awakened, and nothing would save the manager now. The moment before a storm isn't loud. It's quiet, unnervingly quiet, like the world holding its breath. That was exactly how the pier felt now. Amara stood on the boarding ramp, Eli just behind her, the guard frozen in doubt, and the manager burning with a fury he didn't yet understand. Guests hovered on the edges of the conflict, leaning in without stepping closer the way people do when they sense something explosive is about to ignite. Then, it happened. The breaking point didn't come from a shout. It came from a hand. The manager stepped forward, and with the confidence of someone who had gotten away with this 100 times before, he reached out and grabbed Amara's arm. Not violently, not with force, but with ownership. A touch that wasn't a touch at all. It was a claim: you are beneath me. I can move you. Her arm jerked slightly from the contact. Gasps ripped across the pier like a sudden wave hitting the rocks. Someone whispered, "Oh no," another said, "He didn't just do that." Eli lunged forward instinctively. "Sir, don't," but it was too late. The guard stiffened, realizing a line had been crossed. The guests stepped back. Phones rose high, now recording openly. Even the ocean seemed to slam harder against the hull as if protesting the moment. For the first time, Amara's expression changed. Not to anger. Not to outrage. To something far worse. Memory. Her gaze unfocused, as if the pier around her blurred and she was somewhere else entirely. FLASHB, a CK, age 15. A humid summer evening in Charleston. She stood in the lobby of a beach club wearing her best dress, the one her mother ironed twice. She'd come for a school fundraiser invitation in hand, pride swelling in her chest. A woman at the desk took one look, frowned, and said, "Young lady, the service entrance is around the back." Amara had tried to speak, tried to show the invitation, tried to explain, but the woman never looked at the paper. She only reached out, placed a hand on Amara's elbow, and steered her out of line like clearing clutter from a counter. A dozen eyes watched. No one spoke. That was the night Amara learned a truth she never forgot: humiliation doesn't echo. It seeps. The memory vanished as quickly as it came. Back on the pier, the manager was still gripping her arm, not realizing he had touched a fuse soaked in gasoline. Amara slowly turned her head toward his hand. Her voice dropped 2 octaves, soft but terrifying in its clarity. "Remove your hand," the manager scoffed. "I'm escorting you off. Remove your hand." The quiet was so sharp it felt like a blade against skin. The manager let go, not because he was afraid of her, but because his body reacted before his pride could argue. But the damage had been done. The breaking point had been crossed. Eli stepped forward, voice shaking with anger. "You can't do that. She wasn't resisting. She wasn't enough," the manager snapped. "She's trespassing." "I'm doing my job. If you say another word, you'll what it was Amara who asked." Not loud. Not cold, just honest. The manager opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The guests stared at him now, not her. His authority was evaporating with every second he stood there. Amara lifted her chin and addressed the guard directly. "Tell me," she said softly, "is laying hands on someone part of your procedure?" The guard's throat tightened. No, ma'am." "It isn't," the manager barked. "She's twisting everything," a voice from the crowd interrupted. A father with 2 kids shaking his head, "No. We all saw what you did." Another voice joined a woman with a beach bag. She asked you to stop. You didn't. That's on you. A man in sunglasses added, You're out of line, buddy.
Guests were no longer whispering.
They were standing, taking sides. Her side. The manager spun toward them. Everyone stay out of this, but the public had turned. He had lost them. And he hadn't even realized the worst part, he had also lost the yacht. Amara's phone buzzed again. Another preview, Protocol 7 armed. Ready on your signal. Nia, she didn't touch the phone yet. Instead, she placed her hand gently over the spot the manager had grabbed moments ago, almost as if closing an old wound, and said, You've done enough. The guard stepped forward, unsure whose orders to follow. Sir, maybe we should verify what the crew member said. No, the manager shouted. I said she's not you, said Amara, interrupted because you assumed. Her voice rose, not loud, but resonant, firm, controlled. You saw my clothes. You saw my skin. You saw your bias. Not me. Silence swallowed the pier whole. Eli's breath hitched. The guard lowered his hand from his radio. The manager stilled completely, eyes blinking fast like someone trying to wake from a nightmare. And then Amara delivered the line that cracked the moment open. You touched me because you thought I had no power. She stepped forward. One small step. Enough to make him flinch. And now she said, I'm going to show you exactly how wrong you were. The crowd tensed. The guard swallowed. Eli exhaled shakily. The breaking point had shattered. And nothing, absolutely nothing, would be the same after this. The ocean moved first. A long, deliberate swell lifted the yacht by an inch, just enough to make the ramp creak and the air shift again. It was almost theatrical, as if the sea itself knew a reversal was coming. Amara finally lifted her phone. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just a slow, unhurried motion that immediately put the manager on edge. He stepped back without meaning to. Instinct. Even he didn't understand why. The guard straightened.
Eli held his breath.
Guests leaned in. Amara pressed a single command on the screen with her thumb. A soft chime sounded barely audible over the waves, but unmistakably official. Not a text tone. Not a notification.
A system alert.
Protocol 7 activated. The manager blinked. What was that? But the guard recognized the tone instantly. His brows knitted. That's a maritime operations alert. High level. Restricted access. Amara didn't even look at him. Her voice remained steady as a lighthouse beam slicing through fog. It's an internal audit trigger. It records everything in real time. Everything, Eli whispered. She nodded once. Every word. Every action. Every violation. The manager's face twisted. Oh, please. You think you can scare me with an app? Amara lowered the phone just enough for him to see the screen. A live interface glowed across its status bars, timestamps, GPS locks, security channels, syncing. This wasn't an app. It wasn't even something available to crew-level personnel. The guard took a half step forward, eyes widening. Ma'am, only ownership clearance can. Amara raised a finger. Silence returned immediately. You told me I didn't belong here, she said. So I'm giving you a chance to confirm that. The manager scoffed. We don't need to confirm anything. I know who belongs. Do you? She asked softly. She tapped the screen again. On the yacht's upper deck, a speaker crackled. A synthesized female voice played calm, precise, unbothered owner authentication request initiated. Standing by. Half the guests gasped. The guard's eyes snapped toward her. Eli choked on his breath. The manager shouted up toward the deck. WHO triggered that cancel. It's CANCELIT, but the system's voice replied, cannot cancel. Owner-level request only. The tide crashed louder against the hull as if applauding. Amara walked up one more step on the ramp, Not on the yacht yet, but close enough that her presence felt like a shift in gravitational pull. "You wanted escalation?" she said quietly. "So let's escalate." The manager lunged. He meant to grab her again, control her again, but the guard finally stepped forward, blocking him. "Sir, that's enough," the guard said. "Until verification is complete, you need to step back." "Are you taking HER side?" the manager barked. "I'm following procedure," the guard replied, voice tightening. "Something you seem to be skipping." A woman in the crowd muttered, "Finally, someone's thinking." Another whispered, "She's too calm." "This is about to flip." Amara's phone chimed again. A message banner slid across the top. "NIA audit streaming." Captain notified. "All logs synced. Standing by for your directive." The manager tried to snatch the phone from her hand, but she moved it away effortlessly, eyes still fixed on him. "You're panicking," she said softly. I'm enforcing policy," he spat. "No," she corrected. "You're enforcing your comfort." He froze. Because she was right. And the truth stung in front of 40 witnesses. The guard cleared his throat. "Ma'am, may I ask your full name for verification?" Before she could answer, the manager slammed his palm into the ramp rail. "This is ridiculous. She's faking all of it. Look at how she's dressed. Do you think yacht owners stroll in here looking like he didn't finish?" Because a voice from above cut him off. "Marina Control to Deck Ops, we have received an owner-level audit request. Confirm local acknowledgement." The guard pressed his radio. "Marina Control, this is Deck Security. We have an incident involving potential owner misidentification." A long pause answered him. Then, "Copy. Standing by for owner authentication. Do not detain or escort anyone until verification completes." Guests looked around. People's expressions shifted. Recording phones rose higher. Eli let out a shaky breath. "Thank you," he whispered under his breath. But Amara wasn't speaking to Eli. She turned back to the manager. The man who had touched her, humiliated her, dismissed her. "You asked me to leave," she said. Her voice lowered, weighted with history. "You grabbed my arm because you thought I had no authority." The manager swallowed, suddenly unsure. "You claimed I didn't belong. A beat. Sharp. Cold. Inevitable. And now she finished. Your own system disagrees." The yacht lights flickered once, then twice, as if the infrastructure itself recognized her presence. A deep hum rolled through the hull, the kind of hum a vessel makes when it's waking up. A murmur spread through the crowd. Is she really? She must be. No one else can activate that system. She's the owner or something huge. The manager backed away, tripping over his own certainty. Amara lifted her phone to her ear at last. "Nia," she said, voice calm and surgical, "begin internal freeze. Flag every log since 8:42 a.m. Route everything to maritime oversight." "Yes, ma'am," Nia answered instantly. "Already underway." The manager's face blanched. You can't do that." Amara stepped fully onto the ramp now. "Still not on the yacht. Not yet. Watch me." The pier fell silent. Protocol was active. Systems were listening. The tide was shifting. This was the turn. The controlled, elegant, surgical flip. And the manager, the man who told her she didn't belong, had no idea how much more was coming. The deck lights shifted first. A soft pulse white to amber rolled across the yacht's exterior like the vessel was inhaling, preparing itself for what it knew was coming. Then the hum began. Low, steady, powerful. The kind of vibrational thrum that only activates when a yacht's core systems switch into owner recognition mode. Guests snapped their heads toward the sound. Eli stepped back, eyes wide. The guard froze mid-turn. But the manager, he tried to hold onto the last scraps of authority he had left. "What is happening?" he demanded, voice cracking. Who gave permission for that system to Amara, finally stepped onto the top of the ramp. Just one step. but it landed like a gavel. The yacht responded instantly. A soft chime echoed from every speaker embedded in the railings, awaiting owner confirmation. The manager panicked. CUTTHATOFF. He shouted toward the upper deck. Whoever started that, turn it off now, but no one moved. Crew on the upper deck looked confused, glancing at their tablets. Some exchanged worried glances. No one dared touch a thing, because they knew something the manager didn't. Owner protocols outrank human instructions. Always. Amara didn't raise her voice, didn't speed up, didn't grandstand. She simply lifted her wrist as her phone vibrated with the final verification request. Nia, she said quietly into her microphone. Send it. Half a second later, the yacht's exterior LED panels, sleek mirrored bands that wrapped around the upper hull, lit up in a clean surgical white. Lines of text scrolled across the reflective surface. The guests gasped. Someone whispered, "No." Freaking way. Another dropped their drink. The manager's mouth went dry. Across the hull in digital clarity that even the sun couldn't wash out appeared a WNER doctor. AMARALAWISPRIMARYAUTHORIT YVERIFIEDACCESLAVEALOMNI. When the manager stumbled backward like he had been struck. The guard's jaw opened. Eli choked on his breath. A woman in the crowd covered her mouth. And Amara, she simply watched them absorb the truth. The manager sputtered, "No, that has to be fake. This is a malfunction." "This," the yacht corrected him. "Owner presence confirmed." The manager went pale. "Owner biometric signature confirmed." He stepped back, further legs weak. "Owner command priority engaged." Eli exhaled in pure disbelief. "Oh my God," he whispered. The manager tried to speak again, but no sound came. And Amara finally gracefully turned to face him. Her voice carried the calm ruin of a judgment already made. "You told me I didn't belong on this yacht," she said. He staggered, shaking his head. I didn't know, no," she said, stepping toward him. "You didn't want to know." The guests grew silent. Even the waves paused, softening against the hull. "You saw my skin," she continued. "You saw my clothes. You saw your own bias reflecting back at you." Her words were quiet, but each one landed like a hammer. "You called security. You grabbed my arm. You tried to remove me from a vessel I designed, I commissioned, and I paid for." The manager's lips trembled. I thought that," she said, "is your only honesty today." Another chime sounded from the yacht. Ownership handshake complete. Full control granted. The lights brightened. Crew members straightened unconsciously. The guard lowered his radio in shock. And then Amara delivered the line, the one that would be repeated, clipped, quoted, and stitched into every video recording on the pier. "You called me a trespasser on the yacht I own."
Silence erupted into a chorus of gasps and whispers.
"No way. She's the owner, he's done. This is crazy." She warned him. "I knew it." Wholly, the manager collapsed into the nearest railing, gripping it like the world had tilted. Because it had. For him. Amara took one more step now, fully on the yacht she owned, sunlight striking her back like a crown she didn't need to put on. "You questioned my identity," she said. "But now your entire crew, your entire marina, and every witness here knows exactly who I am." The manager's breathing turned shallow. Amara held his gaze. "And in the next few minutes," she added, "they'll learn exactly who you are." The yacht hummed, alive, aligned, obedient. The reveal was complete. The tide had turned. The deck was hers again. But the reckoning, that was just about to begin. Collapse never arrives with an explosion. Not in the real world. It arrives with a silence so deep it exposes the truth in every direction. That was the silence that swallowed the pier the moment the yacht confirmed her authority. The manager stood frozen, one hand gripping the railing for balance, his breath shallow and uneven. The man who barked orders minutes earlier now looked like a child caught stealing from a store he thought had no cameras. But the yacht had cameras. And worse, it had logs. Amara's voice sliced through the heavy quiet. "Nia," she said into her phone, never breaking eye contact with the manager. "Initiate personnel audit." A soft ping echoed from the yacht's speakers. Personnel audit initiated. The manager flinched like the sound had touched him. Amara lifted her chin slightly, her version of raising a sword. "Freeze all active badges," she continued. "Tier 3 and below." The yacht obeyed before Nia could even confirm. A tone rang out, sharp metallic final. All around them, deckhands instinctively reached for their lanyards. Badges flashed yellow, then red, one by one. Tier 3. Tier 2. Tier 1. Red. 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 The guard looked down at his own badge. Red. He swallowed hard. Only one badge on the entire vessel pulsed white. Amara's. The manager spun around in panic. What did you just do?" he demanded, voice cracking under the weight of his own fear.
She didn't raise her voice.
"Your access," she said calmly, "belongs to me. And I just took it back." The manager stepped toward her, forgetting the reality he was standing in. "You can't do this. I've worked here for 10 years. You have no right." She cut him off with a quiet finality that landed like a blade. "I have every right." A murmur rippled through the crowd. The father with the 2 kids whispered, "Oh, he's finished." A woman near the boarding line said under her breath, "This is justice. Real justice." Even the teens recording whispered, "No way, she's iced the whole crew." The manager wasn't listening. He was unraveling. "You can't judge me for one mistake," he shouted. Amara blinked slowly. "One mistake," she tilted her head. "You profiled me. You humiliated me. You put your hands on me. And you did it with confidence." I didn't know who you were. That's the point," she replied. Her tone didn't rise, didn't tremble, it deepened like the ocean beneath them. "You didn't need to know who I was. You only needed to treat me like a human being." The words hit the pier like a wave crashing against stone. Eli stepped closer, voice quiet but firm. "She's right," he said. "You didn't just make a mistake. You made a choice." The manager jerked his head toward him. "Stay out of," but Eli didn't move. The kid who shook in earlier scenes now stood as if anchored into the deck itself. "It's over, sir," he said. For the first time, the manager seemed to understand the truth. Not because Amara had spoken. Not because the badges were frozen. Not because every phone was recording. But because his own crew, his people, were no longer looking at him. They were looking at her. Amara tapped her phone again. "Nia," she said, "bring the captain online." A second later, the yacht's speakers opened with a crackle. Dr. Lewis, the captain's voice, boomed, respectful, composed, awaiting orders. The manager nearly collapsed. The captain, too." Amara didn't look at him. "Captain," she said, "please acknowledge personnel freeze." "Acknowledged," the captain replied instantly. "I am seeing terminated access across the lower decks." "Do you require security escort?" Amara's gaze flicked to the manager, one final measured stare. "No," she said. "That won't be necessary." The manager exhaled shakily, relief flooding his face. But it was too soon. Far, far too soon. "I prefer," she continued, "that they walk themselves out." The sentence landed with the weight of a firing notice, and the crowd reacted instantly. "Oh my God, she got them. That's it. Walk themselves out." Iconic. The manager swayed. "You're firing me." Amara didn't blink. "I'm releasing you from a position you abused." His voice cracked. "Please, I have a family. I didn't mean for you," she said softly. It was a moment. For me, it was a pattern. He broke, chest heaving, eyes wide, sweat dripping, and Amara delivered the quiet execution, "Your access is terminated." Effective immediately. The yacht confirmed USERMARKHARROW access revoked. He covered his face with both hands, groaning into his palms. Amara stepped aside, not for him, but for justice. "You may leave the pier," she said, "or the marina will remove you." "No," he whispered. "Yes," she said. "Now." He shuffled away, broken, humiliated, the same way he tried to make her feel minutes earlier. But unlike him, she didn't smirk. She didn't gloat.
She didn't raise her voice.
She simply let the consequences do the speaking. Eli looked up at her, awe spreading across his face. The guard stepped aside, respect straightening his shoulders. The crowd parted like a tide, and Amara, she stood alone at the top of the ramp, owning the moment with a grace no one could take from her. The collapse was complete, but the statement, the legacy, was still to come. The pier settled into a hush that felt almost sacred. Not the silence of emptiness, the silence of witnesses who had just seen power used the way it was meant to be, quietly, precisely, without cruelty. The manager disappeared down the dock, shoulders caved in, swallowed by the very walkway he once strutted on with borrowed authority. His figure grew smaller with each step until he became just another man who mistook arrogance for leadership. Amara didn't watch him go. She didn't need to. Her work with him was done. Instead, she stood on the threshold of her yacht, the sunlight laying across her shoulders like a perfectly placed spotlight, turning the moment into something almost mythic. Eli remained a few steps behind her, breath unsteady, eyes wide, hands still trembling from the adrenaline of doing the right thing in the wrong hierarchy. The guard kept a respectful distance now, no longer an obstacle but a witness. And the guests stared at her like she was gravity itself. The yacht pinged softly. All unauthorized personnel removed. Systems stable. Owner command priority active. The authority in her presence was no longer invisible. It was visible in every light, every sensor, every panel that responded only to her. Amara finally turned toward the crowd. Not to bask, not to brag, but because leadership demands acknowledgement, not applause. "Thank you," she said softly, voice steady as the tide, "for watching, for speaking, for seeing." Her tone surprised everyone. They expected anger. They expected celebration. They expected a kind of victory speech. What they received was dignity. One woman near the railing cleared her throat, voice wavering. "What you did, that was incredible." Amara shook her head gently. "No," she replied. "It was necessary." The distinction sank deep. Eli stepped closer, tentative, unsure if he was even allowed to stand beside her now that the truth was out. "Dr. Lewis?" he asked quietly.
She turned to him.
I'm sorry," he stammered. "I should have spoken up sooner. I was just afraid she finished for him." "That's human." Eli swallowed hard. "Thank you for not letting him do that to you." Amara looked at him with something warm, something grounding, something he didn't yet know his career would remember forever. "You did the hardest part," she said. "You told the truth when it cost you comfort." His eyes shined. "You remembered my name." "I never forget a person who chooses integrity," she replied. Behind them, guests exchanged glances, some touched, some humbled, some rethinking the things they'd assumed at first glance. A man spoke up, voice carrying across the dock. "If more people stood like you," he said, "things would change." Amara smiled, not wide, but with the subtlety of someone who had learned long ago that confidence doesn't require volume. "Things do change," she said. "One moment at a time, one voice at a time." Her phone buzzed lightly. A message from Nia, audit complete. Incident logged. Press inquiries received holding per your instruction. She locked the screen and slipped the phone back into her tote. No need to parade the moment. No need to weaponize the humiliation. Justice had already done its work. The guard approached her carefully. "Dr. Lewis, would you like an escort on board Amara?" Shook her head. "No, I know the way." Her steps onto the yacht were slow, deliberate, grounded, not a queen ascending a throne, but an architect returning to what she built with her own hand. As she reached the center of the deck, she paused and turned to face the pier one last time. Everyone stilled. Her final statement came quietly, a line meant not just for the moment, but for every version of it that had ever happened to someone like her. "I didn't raise my voice today," she said. "I raised the standard." The words rolled across the pier, weaving into the salt air, sinking into every listener like truth carved in marble. Eli's breath caught. Guests shivered. The guard lowered his head. And Amara owner-leader survivor builder turned toward the open sea as the yacht's engines hummed awake beneath her feet. The vessel she owned, the vessel she was told she didn't belong on now, pulsed with her presence in every beam and bolt. She stepped forward, letting the sunlight guide her path. Behind her, the marina watched in awe. Ahead of her, the ocean opened like a doorway. And somewhere between the horizon and the shifting tide, a truth echoed in quiet triumph: power doesn't shout. It simply arrives.